Hello everyone and welcome back to the office. Today we are going to be discussing Friedrich Nietzsche. Before I go into that, I just want to remind you that your second paper is due on December 6th. And no, I have not released the grades on your papers yet because I haven't gotten all of the feedback that I want to write back to you just yet. And the more feedback I give you, the better chances you have of scoring higher on your paper for the second paper. The other thing is that somebody emailed me and asked about the presentation that I have on the schedule and on the syllabus. And yes, that is an assignment that I need you to do. First of all, it is just pick a theorist, anyone, and give us a short presentational video about that theorist and about what they contributed. It doesn't have to be long. We're talking 3 to 5 minutes max. It's just to help us understand what information you found out about them. And you don't just want to use the book. You might find out some really interesting information about some of these philosophers and theorists if you just Google it, honestly. And the reason why I'm saying just Google it is because, we don't always need just the academic, straightforward, here's the books he wrote, here's what it or she wrote, this is what it was about. But sometimes it's fun to know other different things about the philosophers as well. So you might find those somewhere. That presentation will be evaluated the same way that your public speaking grade was evaluated. I will be looking for organization. I will be looking for topic. I will be looking for credibility. I will be looking for transitions. I will be looking for an attention getter, a closing that is somewhat memorable. Do you have to stand up to give this presentation? No, not necessarily. Just record yourself at home or with your phone or wherever you are and just post it. I will put that assignment up today so that you have a place to post it so that all of us can see it. That's the idea, is for us all to teach each other about these theorists that we've been talking about for the past 8 weeks. So it is due, I believe, by December 3rd. Now, I say by because you can put it up anytime that you want, starting today until December 3rd. As long as you put it up at some point in between then and now. And yes, you can do a theorist that's been done already if you want to, but that's not always the best decision. But if if you've recorded your presentation and you put it up and another person puts it up at the same time and you both have, the same theorist, that's okay. It's not going to kill you. And they'll be graded with the same thought, with the same way, based on content and on presentational style. So I hope that helps clarify that assignment for you. There will be a space for you guys to upload that online in the discussion board on Brightspace. Okay, everybody, let's talk about Friedrich Nietzsche. A lot of people pronounce his name differently. Nietzsche, like just all sorts of different ways. I personally favor Nietzsche because that's the way we pronounced it in grad school. So what did he have to bring to the table exactly? Some people argue that Nietzsche just said, basically, there is no truth, so lie all you want and do whatever the hell it is that you want to do. And that is not what Nietzsche said. Some people say that he talks about things meaning absolutely nothing, that there's no meaning to anything, and we should just all accept that, to curl up in a ball and acknowledge that there's nothing we'll ever know and reach for the darkness. I've heard multiple interpretations of Nietzsche. For our purposes, we're going to be talking about one of his works, and this work is not the most controversial, but almost all of his work was controversial in some way. And perhaps you'll understand why when we get through this. So if you read it, then you already know which way I'm going with this, and you know what I'm going to point out as important. The most important thing that we can learn from Nietzsche is his definition of truth. So on page 1194, in the middle of the page, this is on in your book online. He says, "What then is truth? It's a sum of human relations which have been poetically and rhetorically intensified, transferred, and embellished, and which, after long usage, seem to people to be fixed, canonical, and binding." Truths are illusions, which we have forgotten are illusions. They are metaphors that have become worn out and have been drained of sensuous force. They are coins which have lost their embossing and are now considered as metal and no longer as coins. So what does he mean by that? Well, for one thing, what's he really saying about truth aside from just it doesn't exist? He's saying a lot more about truth than it doesn't exist. He's saying that we create truths in our language. He actually goes on in the conclusionary paragraphs of this work and says that all of the phenomena in the world, everything that we think we can understand, everything we think is true and everything we think is false, even if we say that it comes from science, that there is no one singular big T truth out there. He says instead, what we have is sort of the cultural birthing of meaning and truth. So there are some examples of this that I think are important. Entire paradigm shifts, right? For example, the earth goes around the sun was a radical idea because people always said, no, the sun revolves around the earth, that we must be the center of the universe because our perspective was we are the center of the universe until all of a sudden Galileo comes along and says, no, not really. And in his time, he was not accepted. We keep talking about, we talk about Einstein, Albert Einstein, for example, and his theory of relativity. More and more, I'm hearing people talk about the fact that that theory has been disproven, and I'm just like, I don't even know what the theory was in the first place, right? But major scientific changes, shifts in entire paradigms, shifts in our way of thinking based on what we believed to be true, which were based on experiences of others that have been built up over time. Those are our truths. One prime example of this, and Nietzsche does not mention this, but he is referring to it, which is the Bible. That there were events and that people wrote about those events and talked about those events and therefore established a truth. Now, for people who are believers in the idea of a God or a Christian God or Muhammad or Buddha or whatever all-encompassing force that they might believe in, people who believe in those things, he says believe in them because culturally we have established them to be true, not because they are true. That's probably the most controversial part of this. A lot of people particularly in religious schooling, private schooling, mine for sure, were not fans of Nietzsche. In fact, I didn't even get to read Nietzsche until I was in college because my, very conservative Catholic high school would never, ever put something into our brains that would question God or the existence of God. A lot of people say that Nietzsche said that God is dead. That is true, and not because he said God is dead, God doesn't exist, but because he said the way that we have used language to construct and then to ultimately deconstruct the idea of God, how many people believe in the concept of God, that is what determines what truth is. Now, he talks a lot about metaphors and comparisons, and the reason for that is simple. Words, we know, are symbols. They are representational of something else. If I say to you right now, there is a light shining in my eye, I can show you the light. I could take off my glasses and maybe it wouldn't be so bad. There are a lot of things that I can do, but the one thing I can't do is give you the exact same perspective that I have, or the same exact experience that I have. Instead, I would have to explain things such as this light is burning a hole in my eye, or this light is as bright as the sun, or this light is not helping my look any. Take your pick on how I want to talk to you about my experience. It's going to be metaphorical. It's not going to be my exact experience translating to you. Because even if I say there is a light shining in my eye that's irritating, you may have had that experience before, but you're not having that experience from my perspective right this moment. So all words, all language is a structure. They're building blocks to a structure of what we believe to be true. Now, is it true that some people ran with this pretty far and said, oh, Nietzsche's saying that there's no such thing as the truth, so we just run on and none of us should tell the truth because we don't need to. We can actually lie to ourselves. Yes, some people have done that. Do I think that's accurate? No, I don't. Some people have said that Nietzsche is really saying that, hey, we can lie to each other. It doesn't matter because everything is a lie. Both of those interpretations are incredibly dark and cynical interpretations of what Nietzsche is trying to say. I think it's more important that we understand that Nietzsche was trying to explain to us that all of our experience with the world, all of our reference to it as a scientific experience, is overshadowed by the poetic and rhetorical nature of language that we use to talk about science, to talk about our experiences, to talk about the world, right? In other words, do we need science to tell us that trees are green? Well, not all trees are green, so let's start there. But whenever we draw a tree, when we're 5 or 6 years old maybe, we draw it as if it's a green blob on top of a brown stick. Because at the time, that's what we are taught, that trees are green on top and brown on the bottom. We're not taught all of the different trees, or maybe the trees that never change from green, or the trees that always change in the fall, or when trees don't have leaves. We live in a place and in a world in which we have to speak in metaphor and metonymy. All right? So we can never fully know another person's experience and perspective. All we can know is how that experience and perspective is shared through language. This actually gets at hints of Plato when he talks about his theory of the cave. If you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. That's not going to be on an exam. But if you do know about it, or you want to look at it, that's where I think Nietzsche is drawing this from, the theory of the cave from Plato. That idea that we are separated from reality and are only seeing remnants of what is real or of what is the truth. So where does rhetoric come into that? Well, think about it this way. There's a lot of talk about politics right now. So there's congressional bills that go up. Right now we're voting on amendments and people are like, what does this actually say? How will this actually play out? And the rest of us are using rhetorical means to explain to people what that might say, what it might mean, and where it might go. And that's all we're doing. There's no truth being represented by that. We are rhetorically constructing what we believe to be true, but that doesn't have any natural relationship to the truth. This happens in science, particularly pharmaceuticals, all of the time. You will hear from a commercial or from a doctor or from a pharmaceutical salesperson. This is what this drug is. This is what this drug does. Yes, there might be some negative side effects that would look like this, this, and this, but I mean, it does its job. Well, that's something that I can listen to, or a doctor who says we don't find this particular medication to be effective on people with your conditions. Okay, fair enough, you know. For example, people who get antibiotics for a cold, that doesn't make sense. If you get an antibiotic because you have an infection, that makes sense, right? But a cold, antibiotics don't do anything to a cold. But yet we say this is a solution, here you go. It's not. But what we're doing is rhetorically constructing a solution to help people feel better. And even if it doesn't feel better, they believe that it is supposed to make them feel better. All right? So we construct these narratives, these stories, these fictions, these metaphors for what science cannot boil down any further. Because not every individual is going to experience that medicine the same way. We go on the law of averages, on what is meant to be, not on what is. So how is this helpful to people studying rhetoric like us? First of all, it helps us dig into that first question that we have been asking since the beginning of the semester of the relationship of truth to us, right? It helps us answer that question. Well, I won't say it helps us answer that question. It brings up more questions, I think, about it. But another reason is to understand the power that rhetoric has. As we move through the coming end of the semester, to the end of the semester, we're going to hear from people who say that rhetoric is a way of being in the world, that we create what we want out of the world. Some people have been relating this to the common popular theory of manifestation, right? I can manifest what I want. I put it out there in the world and then it will come true. To some extent, that's true. But if someone's dying of cancer and they keep saying, I want to be cured, I want to live, I don't want to die, that they're still going to die. If that cancer is in a place where it's going to kill them, that is not possible to change. If you would take someone who, say, has a condition that's a little bit more generalized and not fatal, and you say if you take this pill, you'll feel better, but you won't see any impacts for 2 weeks. Well, the person is going to wait those 2 weeks, take those pills, and just wait for it to kick in. And then at some point around the 2-week period, they might say to themselves, okay, it's kicked in, I'm feeling better. And they may or may not be actually feeling better. Now, what that indicates is that we actually do lie to ourselves. And some people would question that, but I don't. I lie to myself a lot. I tell myself my hair looks great today. I know it doesn't, but that's just how I'm rolling, okay? That idea of self-talk. Well, what Nietzsche says about that in this piece is that when we have a talk with ourselves, when we talk to ourselves internally, what we are really doing is we're debating an idea. What we're really doing is picking the metaphors, the language for how we're going to talk about something. I used to have a friend who every year for the new school year, and we went to the same school for 8 years, from first grade all the way through 8th grade. And she used to always say at the beginning of the year, I'm going to redefine myself this year. I'm going to be somebody different. I'm not going to be the kid that gets picked on. I'm not going to be someone who's mean, or I'm not going to be someone who is a member of the popular group or a member of the not popular group. This year I'm going to be a member of the popular group. All these different things every year, as if you just pick up and wipe the slate clean and start over. Of course you're not, but if you tell yourself that, then you can make yourself whatever it is that you want to be. So this kind of self-talk helps us understand the relationship of humans to the truth and what the role of rhetoric is in that. And it plays the key part. I'm going to describe my reality to you. That means I'm going to be using language, and that means that the truth of the matter is irrelevant. What matters is how I present it to you. Do I really believe in that? I'm not sure. I tend to believe that there are certain things that are in fact real and true, and I do believe that if you jump out of a plane without a parachute and you rhetorically construct a net all you want, you're still going to die when you drop. Well, most likely. You're at least going to be severely injured, right? Construct that net all you want in your brain. It's not going to be there. So I do believe that there is some level of reality and truth that we have to accept. I don't happen to agree with Nietzsche that everything can just be taken away or enhanced or developed by language. So this is really a philosophical discussion here. Unlike our other theorists, I can't give you a model or for a way that we study rhetoric. All I can tell you is that the title of his work tells you a lot about what he's trying to say, right? And of course, the title of that work is On Truth and Lies in the non-moral sense. So he's trying to remove it from that sense of morality and move it into the scientific. It's an interesting question. And that's about the reason that I had you read this, is because it makes you think about the language that you use. Some theorists that we're going to talk about will call these things, these statements that we make, rhetorical acts. When you speak, you're not just saying something, you're doing something. For example, if I call someone a moron, I'm not just calling them a name. I'm constructing them as unintelligent. I'm doing something. There's a morality in that. If I say, this woman is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, that is an evaluation on my part that I'm rhetorically constructing for the world. Does it make it true? I don't know. But if it doesn't make it true, then it's a lie. But if we don't look at truth versus lies as a moral question of good and bad, then maybe it doesn't matter. So that's what Nietzsche is trying to ponder in this piece. I want you to have it because I want you to understand how powerful the rhetorical act is. The use of language in a specific way is powerful. Okay, everybody, I hope that helps out. Don't forget to do your assignment for before December 3rd, anytime. And don't forget to turn in your paper anytime or on December 6th. I will talk to you all soon.